All right, guys, welcome back to a wonderful episode of No Casuals. We are back after a little bit of time off, but we had some exciting fights this weekend early in the morning. You get to watch any of them, Luke?
Yeah, I did. I got to watch the whole main card and it was a blessing. I mean, some of the most spectacular knockouts, some come from behind victories that we'll talk about soon, massive upsets, and a disappointing um uh main event for me, but that was just because of it was not because it was a bad fight, just because of my prediction didn't get cashed.
I was the closest. I was the closest. I'll say that much. My prediction was the closest to being accurate while also not being right.
Yeah.
Um, First off, let's talk about what was in the news. Gabriel Bonfim versus Hinat Fakhretdinov is in the Apex. Who do you got in that fight? What do you think about the whole? What do you think about that fight? Before I show my hand.
Yeah, so I think to start off, I think Gabriel will get the win, and I think just because like Renat has come from two, in my opinion, controversial wins. His last fight, I think he lost to Carlos Leal, and then the one before that in June, he I think he lost too. There was a two controversial decisions. Um, I think it was against Dalby. So yeah, I don't know. I think that Gabriel's like a pretty underrated welterweight, and I think he's gonna test him and probably get the W.
So this is where I disagree with you. I think Fakhretdinov should be fighting a top 15 guy. I mean, his record is incredible. He's only lost once in his professional career. The Leal fight, I don't think he won that fight. I do think he beat Nick Dalby in Saudi Arabia, and I also think that the no contest against Dos Santos was probably should have been a win for him too. And these are three guys that are really good. I mean, we didn't know how good Leal was, but we know how good his other two opponents were. Dalby and Dos Santos are both legitimate top 15 guys any day of the week. I think there's guys that are ranked at welterweight that are not as good as Fakhretdinov is. I think Fakhretdinov, I mean, he's got to win over Brian Battle, which Brian Battle's about to get a rank next to his name next week. We'll talk more about that fight later, but I think it's ridiculous considering that he's 30-26 Brian Battle, and now Brian Battle's going to fight for a rank before he does. I think that's insane. And I don't think this fight should be in the Apex either. I think Fakhretdinov deserves crowds. I think he's a big star in Russia, a big star in the Middle East. I think that putting him in the Apex against a guy as dangerous as Gabriel Bonfim is, don't get me wrong, I think it's insane. I think it's ridiculous.
I
Let's
just
move
don't agree.
on.
I feel like after his last fight, I mean, that was so disappointing to watch. It was a complete ripoff. And I think that's something that the UFC probably takes into account when they put him into the Apex before giving him another crowd atmosphere.
I see. I understand that. I just feel like we know how good Fakhretdinov is. He had a terrible night against Leal. We know that. He still found a win somehow, according to the judges. Um, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to put a guy as good as Fakhretdinov on. He'll probably be on the main card, but not in the main event of an Apex card. I mean, if you put on the prelims of a pay-per-view in UAE and Saudi Arabia, that makes sense. But on a fight night in the Apex, just say you want him to lose. Just say you want to,
Yeah.
but he's not going to lose because he's that good. But we'll see. We'll see in February. Seeing in February, February 1st is Saudi Arabia. Israel Adesanya is rumored to be fighting Nasruddin Imavov. I don't want to get too into that fight before it gets officially announced, but it looks pretty likely that that's what we're going to see. Do you think that's good matchmaking? What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that's good matchmaking. It's been a while for Adesanya. Like it's got to be over like 5 years since he's had a non-title fight match for him, and it's going to be interesting. I think that that's the perfect fight to make, and I think early predictions, I think Imavov is probably going to win. I mean, he just defeated Allen Cannonier, some impressive victories. I think that he has a lot of momentum, and Adesanya is kind of, I mean, maybe he'll prove me wrong, but his past two fights haven't been great, and it'll be interesting to watch, though. I mean, that's just an early prediction. Hopefully, it goes through because that's a fight I want to see.
That is a fight I want to see too. I think it is good matchmaking. I would have done a little differently, but I'm not going to complain about it. I disagree with you though on your prediction. I think Israel Adesanya will have a field day against a guy like Nasruddin Imavov. Look, Imavov, he's good, but Brendan Allen is not title contender, not a title contender level guy. He just isn't, and you'll see that when he fights Fluffy Hernandez. He's not that good. But Imavov did beat Jared Cannonier, who's one of the most underrated fighters I think in the UFC. But if you saw how he beat him, it wasn't in a decisive manner at all. Whereas you have a guy like Kyle Bahio who whooped Jared Cannonier in that fifth round, dropped him, made snot fly out of his nose, blood everywhere. And that's the guy I want to see fight Adesanya. That's a guy that is a real title contender, not a guy like Imavov, who I don't think is legitimate at all. I think he's gonna get fraud checks by Israel Adesanya, to be quite honest. One more thing for Saudi Arabia before we move on. This is actually not in our notes because this just got announced. Terrence McKinney is fighting Nazim Sadikov. These guys both have records that are not the best, but we know that they are legitimate guys. They can beat real talent. What do you think about that fight at all?
I mean, so that just got announced.
I got announced about 3 hours ago.
Okay. Yeah, I think I another early prediction. I guess I'll take Terrence McKinney. But I'm not sure. I mean, wait, is that also for Saudi Arabia?
That's on February 1st in Saudi. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a good fight to make.
Yeah, I think it's good matchmaking. I mean, a guy like McKinney, he really thrives against guys that are not great, let's say, but really struggles against guys that are elite in the division. Sadikov has been pretty perennially decent. He's not bad. He's not great. He's 4-5 in his in his UFC career. So I think that it makes sense to make a matchup like this, see if McKinney can really hang with the good guys. So moving on to a little bit of the recap of UFC Macau. First off, I want to plug VFS Valley Fight Series. I was commentating for them this weekend. It was a really fun time. I hope to come back and do it again. I'm wearing my VFS shirt under this hoodie. It was a really great time. So if you have the time, it'll be on YouTube shortly. I'm sure the matches, and you'll be able to hear my voice a little more if you're interested in that. Beyond that, I do want to talk about the commentary during the Piotr Jan fight. I thought it was a little alarming as someone who has now done commentary. Um, did you notice anything about the commentary? You thought it was pretty dead on.
Yeah, so I was a little taken back by this popping up on the script list, but I was a little confused. I didn't hear any specific commentary. I know the um I was, I think, watching on mute with some music in the background. Teddy and I were pretty dialed in, and we turned off the sound, put on some hype music, and we were hoping for Figgy to get it done. I think the announcers might have been some low volume, but I didn't. I'm curious to see what you're getting at here.
Yeah, I mean the way it sounded on the score on the from if I close my eyes and watch the fights, I'd be like, oh, Piotr Jan is messing Figueiredo up.
Yeah,
Mind you, Figueiredo had a knockdown in this fight. He had some really strong moments. He looked like he could be a title contender, and he is a title contender. Let's not get it twisted. But I think that the fight was much closer than the commentary suggested. I think it was a 49-46, 48-47 fight. It wasn't a showout. Piotr Jan won the fight, but it wasn't by such an incredible manner that it was a mollywhopping like we saw in Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway. So I was a little alarmed by the commentary there. But if you were watching
yeah.
the commentary, then we can move on. That's just my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Also, like seeing at the end, unanimous 50-45s, that doesn't give like a lot of credit to Figueiredo for how close the fight actually was. Like, I can understand where you're coming from that, and I completely agree.
Yeah, man. Let's talk a little bit more about Macau because there's a lot to go over there. Muslim Salikov had a spinning heel kick knockout that I think has gotten pretty overshadowed by all the incredible moments that were from that card. But he's now the first fighter in UFC history to have two spinning heel kicks. I called it a little bit. I said his opponent was a little hittable, and I think I got that one right. But when you were watching that, were you out of your seat like I was?
Oh yeah, we were jumping around. It was crazy. That was one of the most. That was the highlight of the night for me. I mean, there were some other great moments which we'll talk about soon, but came out of nowhere. I mean, I was watching that and I just leaped out of my seat.
Yeah, man. There's not much to talk about there. We just want to make note, give a little shout out to Salikov, the king of Kung
Shout
Fu,
out.
making his name very well deserved.
Yeah,
Wang Kong, someone that I was really hot on, someone I said was the future of the division, got submitted in the second round and by a plus 650 underdog.
yeah,
What in the world do we make of that? Is she done?
crazy.
Is she done? Or is
I
this a setback?
No, I think this is a setback. I mean, she was looking very, very dominant against shoot,
I don't even
Fernandez.
that is how big of an upset this is. The fact that we on broadcast cannot remember her opponent's name is ridiculous.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how little people knew about her going into this fight. I don't remember her name. I believe it was Fernandez as a
yeah. I
surname.
think it's Fernandez.
I
But
think
yeah,
it's
she was.
Gabriela Fernandez. I'm not sure though. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. No, it was great. I mean, she was minus. I think close to 1,000, and it was just. I mean, you see this a lot of times where I mean, the Joker paint and everything leading up to the fight. She had so much hype. And it reminds me a little bit about the Ankalaev fight and him getting caught by Paul Craig. And you can see these guys kind of bounce back. I think that this isn't it for her. And it's kind of a trend in the UFC where sometimes they might have to learn. that you can't get overconfident, even though maybe she wasn't. She got caught. She has to be safe, even in the first round when she was looking very, very strong.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's over. I think she does need to go to back to the lab and do some serious work. But if she can put her mind to it, I don't think this is the end for her. Um, Road to UFC. I know we were both missing the prelims because it's quite early for us, but oh my goodness, were those some fights? And I wasn't surprised because Road to UFC always delivers. These guys can fight, but goodness, that head kick knockout, the elbows, the ground. I mean, what a card. The prelims alone. I just want to like, what do you think of that, man? Like
It
is
was.
Road to UFC the best program that the UFC does to field talent? Is it better than the Contender Series and better than the Ultimate Fighter?
I mean, events like that, like this week, make me want to say yes. I mean, it was stunning. I don't think I've seen that type of performance out of any UFC event that I've witnessed, any prelim, any road to you like that. It was unreal. I mean, the head kick, and the backstory behind her. I'm forgetting her name. Uh,
I am also forgetting her name, but
yeah,
seen her
it's
her
it's a
interview.
rough week for Aiden and I, but yeah, it was just unbelievable. I mean, she's a doctor and her family doesn't even know she fights. I mean, this girl is gonna be a star, and she was also a huge underdog. We're talking a lot about this card and how many dogs just came on top and literally blew out any of the odds that Vegas had or whatever. I mean, I wish I could go back in time and take some of these picks.
Yeah, me too, man. I feel like, if they didn't know she was a doctor then, or she was a fighter then, they definitely know now because that is all over social media. The head kick knockout is one of the best we've ever seen. So I just want to make note of just if you haven't watched that card, do yourself a favor, watch that whole card, first prelim to main event. There's not one bad fight on there. It's all worth your time.
And what do you think about the stretcher coming into the octagon? I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen that, if I have.
And it's usually for broken bones or something like that. It was pretty intense. I mean, thank God her opponent was okay. And let's pray for her next opponent because if she can do something half that impressive, then we may need another stretcher. Let's go to Fact or Fake, our signature segment, where I present Luke with a prompt and he has to go fact or fake, and we'll see if the expert, me, agrees. I mean, we're both experts, but we all know who's the casual here in the No Casuals podcast. Fact or fake, Carlos Ulberg will one day hold a UFC title.
I'm gonna go with fact. Although I was kind of not unimpressed, but I was hoping that he would get a finish this weekend. He's young. He jumped up to rank 7 in light heavy, and I 100% think that at one point in his career he'll hold a title, a UFC belt.
Yeah, look, it's interesting because the light heavyweight division is widely considered the weakest division in the UFC, and I would agree with that. So it's a little hard to tell what the UFC's light heavyweight division will look like in 2 to 3 years. But if it looks exactly how it does right now, which it won't, he doesn't beat Pereira, he doesn't beat Prochazka. I don't know. Does he beat Petrino? Does he beat these guys that are coming up the rank? Does he beat Murzakanov? I don't know. I think that's an interesting fight. I think there's a lot of fights there that I think are really dangerous for Carlos Ulberg, but I'm not gonna say fact or fake. I'm gonna plead the fifth here. I don't know, but do I think he'll win in the next year? No. Think he'll win in the next 2 years?
Right.
Probably not. But in 3 years, when Pereira's gone, when Prochazka's gone, when we have that new guard, we see how good these guys really are, then we can start talking about a title for Carlos Ulberg. We're going to pivot a little bit to UFC 310 for our subsequent fact or fake segment. Kai Asakura deserves the immediate title shot that he was granted against Alexandre Pantoja.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this a lot, and it's something that keeps coming up. I think it's a fact. I think that in terms of the flyweight division, it kind of makes sense. I mean, who are you supposed to give Pantoja in this moment? Yeah, I don't have an issue with it at all.
I have a big issue with it. I think it's terrible. I think there are so many guys that have the shot. I mean, Kai Asakura is a great fighter. I mean, he was killing it at Rising, but he's a guy who has a loss to Manel Kape, who's
Mhm.
barely in the UFC anymore, right? So we're talking about guys that are genuinely the guys he's beaten are good. Kyoji Horiguchi is very good in Bellator, but are they UFC title level? No, they're not. They're just not. I think a guy like Kai Kara France, who's hasn't fought Pantoja in a long time, who knocked out Steve Erceg in the first round, should have gotten that shot pretty clearly. I think Royval has a better case for it, even though he's fought Pantoja so many times. I think Moreno with the win over, I think Albazi, if he never fought Moreno, would have a better shot at the title. I think there's a lot of guys there that I think there's very few fighters in the UFC that have gotten a title shot immediately, and they were all champions in organizations like Pride or Strikeforce, so they came in and immediately got the shot. That hasn't happened in almost a decade. Chris Lieben, think about this. Anderson Silva, one of the greatest fighters of all time, and we'll talk about that next week. Next week, by the way, we have a top 15 list of the greatest fighters of all time, and we're really going to get into it. This is where we're really going to argue. But Anderson Silva is one of the top 15, in my opinion. He had to fight Chris Lieben, who was at that time one of the best fighters in the world at the middleweight division. No matter who you are, Prochazka had to fight Ozdemir to get his foot in the door. Chandler had to fight Hooker. You fight at least one time, and then you get your title shot. And Asakura did not have that opportunity given to him. So I think it's ridiculous. I don't think Asakura should be getting the shot at all. I think there's plenty of guys. I think Kara France is by far a better contender against Alexander Pantoja.
Yeah. I think that UFC definitely went into this assuming that it would also be a co-main for
Yes.
310, and now that it's bumped up, I wonder if they have any regrets. But we'll see.
And look, if Asakura can get the win here, it's massive. Speaking of Asakura and Pantoja, if Pantoja were to win, would he be the second greatest flyweight of all time, above well, below Demetrius Johnson and above a litany of people that could be considered there?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's fake. I mean, it's impressive, and he's on the road to becoming one of these greats. But if you, I mean, we have established that he's not above Demetrius Johnson. And what about like Henry Cejudo and even Figueiredo? I don't think he's above them yet. So with the win over Asakura, it would be impressive. But maybe that would secure him fourth.
I see. This is where I don't see eye to eye with you, man. Because look, if you look at a guy like Figueiredo, who has a win over Pantoja, he's lost to Moreno, right? Twice. They're 2-2. Well, they're 2-1,
Right.
which is weird. So he lost to Moreno twice, right? Pantoja's whooped Moreno multiple times in close-ish fights, but he won. He beat Rival. He's cleared the division out. He beat Perez. He's beat a lot of guys that are really divisional mainstays, right? Obviously, he's not going to catch with Demetrius Johnson shy of a miracle because that's insane. But I think he's number two if he wins on December 7th. I think he has to be. I don't think anyone's better.
Even
And
above Henry Cejudo?
I think so. I think Cejudo only lost twice at flyweight against Benavidez and against Johnson. I was just looking at these for next week's video, but those are good losses. But Benavidez got demolished by Figueiredo. So I put Figueiredo probably above Cejudo at flyweight. I would put Cejudo higher all time, but purely at flyweight for that sole accomplishment, I would put Figueiredo above Cejudo. I would. I
All
would
right.
have to.
Yeah, we're gonna get even deeper into this next
Yeah.
week. So
Yep. If you're liking conversations like this, you'll love next week's episode. But let's move on to stay on topic of 310. Ian Garry is the best fighter Shavkat Rakhmonov has ever fought to date.
um I'm gonna go with fake, but I see an argument for why it would be a fact. I just think that when when Shavkat went into fighting Jeff Neal, I think that was go like that version of Jeff Neal was the toughest fighter that Shavkat was ever fought. I mean, he has a win over Bilal, Luque. Like I don't think Gary has proven himself against high-ranking welterweights yet. So I don't think that's true. But there's also there's a slim. Shavkat is one of these guys where like he hasn't exactly fought a plethora of really not intimidating but powerful welterweights. And I think that in this journey, a win over Ian Gary is huge for him.
Look, I don't see eye to eye with you on the first part there. I think Ian Garry is he's a really good fighter, and the way he fights stylistically is a nightmare for Shavkat. And we'll talk more about this in a second. But if Shavkat is to get the win here against another top 10 opponent who's undefeated, right? One of the best strikers Shavkat's ever seen. Not the best, but one of. We'll talk about that later too. I think that's the best fighter he's ever fought. I think it is to date. And Jeff Neal is a second. I get that. But I think that Shavkat has fought guys. Carlston Harris is really good, despite the fact that he's been on a little bit of a skid recently. Stephen Thompson, Jeff Neal, the list goes on, right? He's fought
Yeah,
good guys, but Ian Garry looks like he could. I mean, they call him the future for a reason. He's good. He's really good.
he's good.
Let's move on to our last factor fake prompt. Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie deserves its placement on the main card of UFC 310.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with fake. I think that the way the card is set up on 310 is a little confusing to me. I know we had Nate Landweather up there too. And when you have like some of these prelims that are so stacked, it does confuse me. I mean, Sterling, I understand kind of ha having him on the main spot of the prelims. But you know, you got Brown Battle, which could, in my opinion, take that spot. Even like a long shot, but even like Weidman Anders, like that was for 309 going to be on the main card. So I don't know. I think that while Bryce Mitchell's fight is very exciting, I don't know if it necessarily deserves I believe it's on the what the s- it's not the first fight on the main, but the second, right?
Yeah, it's the fourth
Yeah,
fight.
yeah.
I think, see, I think it's fake. I think this is very fake. I think Bryce Mitchell is a guy that he has some fans, but I don't know if he really should because he's not that good. Kron Gracie is just he got whooped in his last two fights, like demolished. Um, I think this is not going to be very competitive. I think Bryce Mitchell is going to outland him on the feet and not grapple him at all. It's going to be like Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. And it's going to be
Mhm.
another disaster. And then you're going to have in my opinion, the greatest bantamweight of all time on the prelims fighting an undefeated guy that's who's in the top five. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. And if you want to bang on the main card, you have Brown Battle right there. Like you said, that's a
Yeah.
great fight. That's an incredibly fun stylistic matchup. So those are two options that I'd put way above a Chrome Gracie fight in the year 2024. Okay, so a fight just got announced, Luke. This is live on air, by the way.
Live on air.
Rainer de Ritter at UFC 311 will square off against Kevin Holland. At,
Wow.
that's
Wow.
live on air. What are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised at
What are
all.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I feel like Kevin Holland has a tendency to kind of take these fights, and that's an exciting one.
It is, and I
That's
think
gonna be interesting. Wait, is which event is it?
that's 311. That's in LA.
Wow.
That just got dropped. That's interesting. Stylistically, it's a nightmare for Holland. Really bad
Yeah.
for Holland.
Mhm,
But De Ritter looked pretty not great against Mearshart. But
mhm.
if you're looking at an easy fight in the top 15 at middleweight for Rainer De Ritter, it's probably the easiest fight for him is Kevin Holland. So,
Yep, I was gonna say if they wanted to give him a
right?
ranked opponent,
They
that's
want to
it.
give him, yep, they want to give him the easiest drink they can. They'll give him De Ritter. So that's interesting. Keep it pushing though. I need more time to articulate that thought, but goodness, is that a fight? Anyway, let's move on to Ted's Talks. The best
Best
segment,
segment.
the best segment. It's got to be the best segment. Um, Make sure that's what I want. Yeah, the best segment on our show, where Teddy, the absolute killer. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, here we go. Teddy will give us his take on the UFC and UFC 310. Let's hear it. We're both going to this with no knowledge of what he said, except he warned me, said this is a special hot take. So
Oh
let's see.
wow.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Ted's Talks. I've got another hot take for you guys. I'm going to focus on the co-main event of UFC 310 today, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Garry. This is going to be an amazing fight. Shavkat is 18-0 with 18 finishes. On the other hand, Ian Garry is 15-0. Both fighters are so high level, they're so elite. Having 18 and 15 fights without a loss, I think, is an amazing stat. So this is going to be a good test to see how they can combat to the ability of each other. So my official prediction, and this is going to be a little controversial. You guys might not like this one, but I've done a lot of research, and I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to beat Ian Garry, but he will not submit him. He will not knock him out. Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to win on a decision. Ian Garry is an elite fighter. He will not let Shavkat submit him. He will not let Shavkat knock him out. He's got great defense. What's going to happen? It's going to be a great 5-round fight. Shavkat is going to win. Ian Garry is going to fend him off for all 5 rounds, but Shavkat will dominate his way to a decision. It will be his first time winning without a finish. That's my take. This has been TED Talks, and I'll see you next time. Back to you guys.
What do
You
we
know,
think?
Aiden, for a second there, I thought he was about to go and pull something about Ian Gary winning.
I was getting
I
over
was
Gary. I was really excited
scared.
about that. That was a
Yeah.
really close one.
Yeah, but that's that. Yeah, I know. I was getting nervous, but that's not. I mean, that's a hot take, but I don't.
I'm
I
just
see
saying.
where I see
I don't
his
think it's
argument
crazy.
behind it.
I don't agree, but I don't think that's great.
I
I
think it's
think
crazy.
Let's get ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's talk about that Rachmanov fight. Look, you look at the striking of Gary, and it's elite. It's high level striking, really good, and his grappling's not terrible either. I mean, he did wrestle MVP and win that decision. But at the same time, you've got grapplers like Carlston Harris, who have fought Rachmanov and got knocked out on the feet. Got one of the greatest strikers in UFC history in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who got submitted in the first round by Shavkat. I don't know if Gary can survive a 5 round decision with the grappling prowess of Rachmanov and the striking ability. I don't know. I really don't. And Gary is in my opinion, the best martial artist that Rachmanov has ever faced. But at the same time, it's like Rachmanov looks like he's just on an upper echelon of fighting, full stop. He needs to fight a complete martial artist in order to lose. And I don't know how complete Ian Garry is at present. So I'm not going to say I agree with Ted. I get where he's coming from. I would say a late round submission from Rachmanov, maybe round 3 or later, over 2.5. You can hammer that. I think that is probably the most likely outcome here.
I completely agree. I think he's going to submit him, and I think that if the only argument for Gary is that he's a dangerous striker, then a win against Wonder Boy kind of shuts that down for me. So, I think Rakhmonov has experience against strikers, and I think that at the same time, any threat that Gary poses on the ground is just overwhelmed by Rakhmonov. So, I don't. I think it's probably going to be a little bit earlier, maybe round two, submission. But yeah. I think we agree.
Yeah, I think it's a competitive fight for a while, and then Rachmanov will find a way. I think it's what
Mhm.
happened. I think it'll be like the Jeff Neal fight, to be honest. Let's talk about some quick picks on next up. Next up is our new segment, about 2 weeks. Beautiful thing, but it's a fun segment, man. We talk about my picks for what is next for the UFC's division after Macau. We'll see who wins, who loses, and I'll get your picks on my fights. Next up, first, Piotr Jan should fight Sean O'Malley next.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Because
I
I
know
mean, a
that
lot of people say
Marab,
that Piotr should fight Marab, right?
yep, no, he shouldn't. And I know that Marab is watching and he's kind of probably hoping that the UFC makes the Peter Yan fight, but we all know that he's scared of Umar and that Umar is the fight to make for that.
And look, I think it's more likely the UFC does make Piotr Jan versus Marab because of Ramadan, because Umar refuses to fight in March at 313.
Hmm.
But if everything was perfect and Umar could fight on 313, Piotr Jan should rematch Sean O'Malley. That was one of the closest fights we've ever seen. It was an incredible battle. But make that 5 rounds, make that a co-main event, and it will sell so many pay-per-views. Your head will spin.
100%. Especially with Peter Yan kind of claiming a victory over Sean O'Malley after the last fight.
And that makes sense. I mean, the fight was razor thin. It was a
Mhm.
very close fight. You rewatch it, it's closer than I thought on first watch, and I think it's a great fight. So next up, Davidson Figueiredo should fight Song Yadong.
Mm.
Now
Yeah,
think about the striking exchange between a guy as powerful as Figueiredo and a guy as technical as Yadong. Yadong was supposed to fight Umar, which is insane. But instead, Figueiredo will draw him. I think it's a great fight. You can put that back in China because Figueiredo made a ton of Chinese fans after having a great fight in the main event in Macau. And Yadong is from China, so I think that's a great fight.
I agree completely.
Next up, Yan Xiaonan should fight Virna Yandiroba next.
I mean, I think she should fight for the title. But if not, then this is the fight to make.
Look, I don't think Xiaonan should fight for the title. I think that there's better contenders for this is a rough week for me because I'm blanking on her name and she's the number one contender in the division. And I've met her and she's really nice. But the number one contender at women's strawweight is undefeated. Um, she's hasn't fought in a couple years. That's why I'm blanking on her name. But she's undefeated. She's beaten Xiaonan. She's beaten everybody they put in front of her dominantly. She beat Carla Esparza easily. I think that's a great fight for Wei Li. I think those are the two best women in the world, perhaps. And I think that Xiaonan has one more test before getting. And Yandiroba has been on a terrorism. So I think that's a true number one contender fight. You can make that a co-main anywhere you want, and people will watch it. We're running out of time, so we're going to run through these really quick because this podcast has gone up. We might have to talk about some of the 310 stuff next week if that's cool with you.
Sounds good.
All right, so we'll do next up and then we'll call it a day. But Muslim Salikov should fight Chaos Williams. That's
Yeah, I
the
think
way I
that's
think.
exciting,
I think it's
especially
very exciting.
technically. What?
I think it's very exciting because I think Salikov's a better technical striker, whereas Williams has some of the best power pound for pound in the UFC. So one can catch the other at any given moment.
100%. Yeah.
Carlos Ulberg should fight Nikita Krylov,
Yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I don't know. If I feel like if Oberg had gotten a finish, they might have given him a little bit of a higher uh ranking guy, like maybe like Roundtree. I would want to see that fight, but I'm fine with this. Yeah.
and look, I think with Prochka coming out against Hill, I think maybe Roundtree does make more sense. I would like to see Roundtree fight Jamal Hill, but Roundtree looks like he's going to be nursing his injuries in the Barrera fight for a little while, so maybe we
Hmm.
let the division shake out a little bit. Let Oberg fight Krylov because Krylov's been out for a while and he's his opponent pulled out of 309. He's healthy. He's ready to fight in the U.S. I think that it's a great fight. Volkan Ozdemir should fight Azamat Murzakanov.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
It's a great fight. Mirzakanov's undefeated, looks really good. Ozdemir is tried and proven. I mean, again, a guy I think has really slept down in this division. I think it's a great fight. And look, whoever wins is the best bald head outside of Pereira in the light heavyweight division. I think that's simple. Minying Zhang should fight the loser of Petrino versus Jacoby,
Yeah.
right? I mean, a win here puts him outside of the top 15. But again,
Yep.
the light heavyweight division is very thin. So if he beats the loser of Pacino versus Jacoby, he probably fights a ranked opponent next. I think that makes sense.
Yep.
I think it's a good match. I originally had him against Ian Cutelaba, but Ian Cutelaba is booked against Ibo Aslan now, which is another incredible fight, and that's a banger. But I would like to see him. Either one of these guys would bring a fight to Min Young Zhang because they're both fun fighters. So we'll see on that one. Finally, Loner Kavanaugh should fight Felipe dos Santos.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, yeah. Especially, yeah.
That's fun. That's
Uh-huh.
fun.
Yeah. That makes me excited.
And we'll save under the radar for next week. We'll keep that short. Um, in the meantime, the rest of it we have planned is for 310. We can save that for next week. If you want to get our official picks for UFC 310 outside of the Rakhmonov Gary fight, I'm talking Kaya Sakura, I'm talking Aljamain Sterling, I'm talking Cyril Gane, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, Vicente Luque, Tema Garimbo, and all of our special prelim coverage, our under the radar segment, which I'll keep a little quiet for this week, as well as our takes on the top 15 greatest fighters of all time, which will get, I think, Luke, a little contentious here. I think we don't see eye to eye on some things.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's the episode you guys want to look out for.
I feel like that's going to be a fun one. So look forward to that. Tune in, and we'll see you next week,
See you guys. Thanks for the support as always.
of course.